name is Jay Sugarman, and I want to welcome you to Museum Open House. This ongoing series features and highlights many of the outstanding museums and other cultural institutions. The main purpose of most programs is to inform viewers about current and upcoming exhibits, various programs, resources, and other opportunities that are available for the general public. Today via Zoom, we're fortunate to have as our guests Lea Morgan, Adam Frezza, and Terri Chiao, all of whom are associated with the New England Botanic Garden at Tower Hill, located in Boylston. Lea serves as the manager of exhibitions, and Adam and Terri are two highly accomplished Brooklyn-based artists whose work as a collaborative team explores play and craft across a range of media. During the program, Adam and Terri will be informing us about their very engaging artwork entitled CHIAOZZA, a sculpture exhibition, which is currently on display across the New England Botanic Garden. We'll go on a behind-the-scenes tour where we'll encounter a series of sculptures called Gemels, and in the process, come to better understand and appreciate the parallels between growing plants and making art. In addition, we'll also gain some insight into Adam and Terri's artistic practice and their innovative sculptural process. Let's start by meeting our guest and then hearing all about CHIAOZZA, a sculpture exhibition, and some of the other outstanding opportunities at the New England Botanic Garden. Welcome, so delighted you're all able to be here.
Thank you, Jay.
Having us.
Yeah, hi, Jay.
You know, a couple of weeks ago, I had the wonderful opportunity to visit the exhibition. I'm eager to hear more and have you inform viewers. But before we do that, I also think it would be of interest just to hear a little bit about your backgrounds. Lea, would you please start by sharing a little bit about yourself, your position, and the New England Botanic Garden, please?
Absolutely. So I'm Lea Morgan. I'm the manager of exhibitions here at New England Botanic Garden at Tower Hill. I've been here for about 2 years coming up, and I work with the artists and bring artwork and exhibitions here to the garden. And I love to work with plants and art, and it's a perfect combination of my background of being a biologist and an artist. So it's been fun being here, and I love working with the artists like Terri and Adam.
Terrific, terrific. Thank you. Adam and Terri, a little bit about your backgrounds and artistic interests, please. Terri?
So I'm Terri Chiao and half of CHIAOZZA, a third if you count our daughter Tove. And we've been working together since 2011. We met sort of casually at a karaoke bar in New York City, and then sort of fell into a collaboration that started really as getting to know each other. And that language of playing these kind of art games has folded into our practice together. That's been going on for the last 12 years. I studied art history and architecture, and have kind of come to this practice with a very interdisciplinary approach. I think both of us, despite our kind of fields of study, have a very interdisciplinary approach to the work, which probably shows as well.
Yeah.
Adam, please, a few words.
Yeah, my name's Adam Frezza. When Terri and I met, I was kind of in a hiatus of art making. I have a background in drawing and painting. All of my paintings kind of wanted to come off the wall and become sculptures. And I think when I met Terri, her architecture background, and it was some of the early times she started recognizing herself as an artist. Sculpture seemed to be the place where our work came together most naturally. And then, like Terri said, play, I think as a duo, it's also natural for us to set up little exercises for ourselves where we can go back and forth and kind of make moves upon each other's moves to grow imagery that we otherwise wouldn't create independently. And we find that sense of collaboration really inspiring, and also something we like to share with others, if there's a willing playmate to come into the fold.
Terrific. Well, we definitely want to hear more about that process shortly. But before we get right to that, Lea, would you please share a little bit of why and how the CHIAOZZA exhibition came about?
Yeah, absolutely. So every summer we do our big summer feature exhibit, and we were looking for a really interesting, playful, fun artist to come into the garden that would stand out but also work well with our mission. And I believe we found Terri and Adam's work on social media. And I think we saw their work at Coachella, and we were so impressed and stunned. And we loved the way it stood out in the landscape. It also kind of became part of it. And that's something that we really thought would work well here at the garden. So we thought that their work resonated really well with our mission, which is to create experiences with plants that inspire people to improve the world. And yeah, we've been talking for probably over a year about planning our exhibit and what we were going to do. And Terri and Adam made a couple of visits here, and we met and did a walkthrough and kind of looked at the different spaces. And then they spent some time designing work, and it worked out really well. And we're really glad to have them here.
Most definitely, most definitely. Terri and Adam, what initially appealed to you about collaborating with the New England Botanic Garden?
Well, I think our work is generally inspired by examining nature, not necessarily as scientists, but more as almost with a child's mind, the awe and wonder that comes from the world around us, and trying to see it anew each time we look. And with that as a leaping point to make work in the studio, we often come to these kind of geologically inspired amassments or plant inspired sprouting coming out of a rock shape. And in an art context, we love seeing it in a gallery, we love seeing it in a museum if we're lucky, but to come back to nature and bring some of these abstractions back into the field is something we're always super excited to share and experiment with, and see how those pairs start to come together.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that sense of play that's so visible in your work, and just the encouragement that you have visitors going through the garden interact with both the environment in a playful way with each other. As we begin our tour shortly, we'll definitely want to hear more about it. But Terri, here we see you in the studio. Could you share a little bit about the process that's involved in creating your artwork?
Yeah, we work a lot with a material called paper pulp, and what you see here is the pink material. You see it in the bowl in the foreground, and then also being applied to an armature. And with the paper pulp, we've sort of come to that through a long organic process of starting to work with cut paper to make small shapes. And then every time we got scaled up, we had to try new methods. So we were working with paper mache of various kinds. And at some point we wanted to try something that was a little more durable and robust. And so then we came to discover paper pulp as a primary medium. And a lot of our paper pulp is created from recycled paper. In the beginning, it was literally torn up junk mail that we soaked in water. And now we work in Bushwick, Brooklyn, which is very, there's a lot of creative studios nearby, and a lot of photo backdrop paper gets thrown away every day. And so we bring those are those large rolls of paper that you see, behind a model. And those get donated to us basically from people in the neighborhood we know. And we process that material through a very fine paper shredder that you would find in an office. And we blend it with water. And that kind of makes a mash, which we then at different times in the gallery, for instance, we add pigment to kind of get color in there. And other times the paper itself has a color, like here, in this case, this was a roll of pinkish red photo seamless paper that we blended and added some wood glue to help make it a little more durable for the outdoors. And it's a material that's very soft and pliable. And you'll see in these, for instance, every time we apply it, you can kind of see the remnants of our finger marks. And so when you're in the garden, you see the little textures and divots. It's mostly from our hand applying the pulp to the pieces.
What appeals to you about working with these type of materials and this medium?
I think initially the ease of acquisition. We didn't have to go out and purchase many materials. We didn't have to kind of rely on any other source at first because it was coming to us in our mailbox. And as our practice grew, we'd check as many Go Green boxes as we could, so we were receiving less junk mail, and trying to figure out how to evolve that effort of taking something that's already there and turning it into viable art material. And yeah, thinking about seamless paper in the photography world, so much of that gets so easily wasted. You get a crinkle, you get a footstep, it's no longer usable for the next session. So then big swaths are suddenly piled up, and it just felt like a natural response to what was going on around us. And then taking what could have gone into the landfill and turning it into something that will hopefully be appreciated and admired is a great challenge that we like to try to fulfill.
Yeah, and there's also the quality of the paper itself being kind of a soft material that is very versatile. And we love the texture, even on a flat piece of paper. When you draw on it with graphite, you kind of see there's slight, if you zoom in, there's a texture to the paper. And so then the marks that happen on the paper are very appealing. The softness of the paper is very appealing, and the texture. But also the fact that when we do apply the paper to the outside of a sculpture, we're essentially making a three-dimensional piece of paper that, then we can affect in different ways. And there's something really attractive about that. We like also that it's not that popular of a medium, in that people don't always know what it is right away. And I think that ambiguity is also appealing to us.
Nice. You've spoken about the role and value of play and nature in your work. Before we take a look at some of the sculptures in the garden, a few words about the connection with the creations that refer to as Gemels. What's the connection there and the intent?
Well, early pandemic time, we were quarantined on an apple orchard in Vermont and started learning about the grafting of trees and seeing a rootstock paired with a different flowering bush. And as we dug deep into what's going on here in the orchard, we started to learn about this Latin word gemel, which literally means to pair. And I think as a duo, we saw some poetry and romance in that notion of putting two things together, you get something new. And that led to responding to what we saw in the field, the apple trees over the course of the season, seeing, early March, we get there, they're kind of still frozen in their winter and working their way out. And then when they sprout and flower, and then ultimately fruit and become heavy and burdened with gravity, that whole span really inspired a lot of the images that we started drawing and pulling from, really just combining shapes, thinking about what happens when we pair this shape with this shape and start to layer and stack. Maybe you could talk more on that. Yeah,
I mean, I think the fact that this a lot of our work deals with or kind of addresses transformation and growth, whether it's the way that rocks and different forms and geology are created, or the ways that plants and trees grow and change over time. And so I think that it seemed like a fitting imagery to explore in the context of a garden.
Lea, before we take a little tour, would you just share briefly some of the thoughts and considerations with curating, laying out the exhibit and the different landscape and areas that visitors can experience?
Sure. So when you come to the garden, we have lots of formal gardens, and we have paths that go through the trees and natural areas. So as we were deciding where we wanted these spaces to go, we wanted to make sure that these sculptures were in accessible areas so everyone could enjoy them. So we walked around and kind of looked at the spaces, and we found some areas that kind of called to like, yeah, this would be a great spot for this sculpture. Some of them were already like, there was a sculpture there in the past. So we decided this would be a great spot. It's kind of calling to having more sculptures there. And then we found some other spots that we thought, oh, this needs a little bit of art in this area. So they're mixed into the garden beds. They're in some natural areas. Two of them are at the beginning of Pliny's Alley, which is an area that leads to one of our newest gardens, the Ramble. And that's kind of like a welcome into this space. Yeah, we worked really side by side to kind of figure out what's going to work for our garden visitors and for the artwork. It was a good combination.
Nice, nice. And as we can see the image here, that's going to lead into a short video of some of the area, some wonderful signage that gives people a little more background information. But as we play it just for a second, we can see a wonderful prompt that engages visitors even more. Very thoughtful to, I think, enhance all of our viewing and observation powers, which I think we give slight to in any exhibition. And here there's always a reminder of something to look at, some connection to nature that we all can be making on our tour. Adam and Terri, what were some of the thought behind these stimuli?
Which stimuli?
The prompts that people are given at the exhibition. Like, look at the trees around you, share with a friend the shapes that you see.
Right. I think the garden team actually picked up on things we were introducing formally and recognizing, and a lot of it was kind of luck and happenstance. Here's a piece we put, like one of the palm stalks is placed right next to a kind of garden of stalky palms that happen to be sprouting in spring. So the relationships started to create themselves almost. And I think the designers at the garden were picking up on that when making these signs, and these prompts came from them, I think, discovering on their own through the work and through the space.
No, I mean, it's such a natural connection between what the team and your work collaborated and coordinated, because it made me feel touring that, you know, you had specifically site-specific made your pieces for just the area that it happened to be in. So it's interesting to see the collaboration. Well, let's give viewers just a little sense of some of the grounds before we look at some of the pieces individually. So there we see an overview. And as we go around, a few words about the setting and the pieces and the intent from you, Terri and Adam, please. What are some of the
can you ask
pieces?
the question again?
Yeah, as we go around, a few comments about the different pieces that we're seeing and either some of the process or the intent of the sculpture.
Well, with the sculpture out in the gallery and then also out in the landscape, we really wanted to encourage this idea of the gallery kind of coming into the garden. And so the sculptures themselves that are outside are on these white boxes that we made in the studio. And they, you know, it's a way for the sculptures to be housed in a stable manner, but also a way to sort of like, you know, guide viewers to think about these objects as if they had just come out from inside out. And, you know, I think a lot of times people have these, we wanted to encourage people to walk through the gardens and discover the pieces. It kind of almost happened upon them. Like this one, for instance, is in the lawn, but it's sort of on the side on a little secret path a little bit. So this, I feel like, really rewards a viewer. You could kind of approach it from many different angles, from a grassy path, from a brick path, from another direction, from the lawn, and you get glimpses of it through the trees. And it's a really, you know, I think one of the fun experiences of being in a garden or being outside in a place with beautiful nature around you is that sense of discovery. So we really wanted to encourage an art walk in the garden, and also maybe people would look at the work the way that they might inspect the flowers, or, you know, sometimes people spend a very long time just looking at a flower, taking pictures, making watercolors. And in the same way, we hope that viewers might be able to have that sense of wonder and discovery with the work as well.
Yeah,
I think achieve
Make-
that.
making connections as you go through. So you might study a flower in one area of the garden, and then as you progress through, recognize that flower apart in a different area, and like, oh, you start to understand and connect things. So I think the fact that these aren't all in one place and that you have to kind of discover as you go, and maybe by the end, they all come together as a family, of a unit in your mind, where you can't see them all together. You have to kind of collect memories with them. These two are almost like the gatekeepers, the invitation holders at the beginning of Pliny's Alley, heading to the Ramble. And we like that they're kind of this comforting entry point of curiosity. Like, what are they? Oh, they're sculptures. Okay, I understand. It's art. Okay, that someone made art. Let's keep going. And then as you go, yeah, hopefully they start to kind of, yeah, make sense as a unit.
You know, speaking of the pieces themselves, just a few more words about the process. Do both of you have a sense at the beginning what the end product's going to be, or does that evolve as you're putting things together?
Yeah, I think in this case, we did a lot of drawings and really tried to be site specific about each spot so that we could share it with the garden, have a conversation, talk about scale, how large for each spot are we going to work. And then in this instance, a fountain took a lot of kind of figuring out how are we going to put paper in water, what scale, how big is the pond, how do we engineer a pump through the center of the sculpture. So there are a lot of kind of behind the scenes minutia planning elements that go into making it feel effortless once it gets to the grounds. That is also a thrill for us as artists to kind of figure those things out. And that's where I think the parallels between a gardener and ourselves as sculptors, we kind of start to recognize that in the studio, we are doing the pruning and the prodding and the gestation to help things come to fruition. We see that as a poetic parallel to a gardener, or sometimes a baker. Baking comes up a lot in the studio as well.
Yeah, wonderful connections there. Just fantastic. What are some of the reactions and feedback any of you have heard to the exhibition so far?
We've had great feedback. People find it fun and intriguing. We're thrilled by the feedback across our social media platforms. Folks have been engaging enthusiastically and excited to make a trip to the exhibition and see the gardens. People really have been loving it. I actually just saw a little kid run over and say, "Mom, look what I found." So I'm witnessing it right now, which is really fun.
Cool.
And
Yeah,
just
it's always nice to hear.
to let viewers know, it's going to be up and at the garden well into October. So lots of time to make your way. Adam and Terri, you mentioned in some of your initial comments, the gallery inside, which is another opportunity. Would you briefly share what viewers can see there, as well as wonderful film as well, little video?
For sure.
Inside the gallery, we have 6 paper pulp sculptures that are more indoor sculptures. These were made with shredded cotton paper, and then we added pigment to the paper itself rather than painting. The ones outside are painted paper pulp, and on the ones inside are pigmented paper pulp. So the color itself is in the paper. So you can see each segment was a different color pulp that we applied, and we have lots of quart containers of labeled pulp of all different colors in our fridge at the studio. And the painting and the video, and then there's an interactive piece where you can also move shapes around to build your own Gemel. I think that those pieces, there's 3 paintings actually, and they sort of speak to the multidisciplinary approach that we take with the work, where sometimes within the same concept, for instance, in this case, Gemels or paper forest, we've worked at it from a painting perspective, from a sculpture perspective, and also from a film perspective. And the film, you could maybe speak.
Yeah, the
about.
film is a piece called Paper Forest, and the pieces in the film are little sculptures of paper plants, kind of imaginary plants, anywhere from 1 to 4 inches tall. And we had the opportunity to work with a media house here in Brooklyn called Brooklyn Public, and they are the public broadcast house that helps bring content to Brooklyn here. And they also have residencies where they invite artists to use their equipment to see a vision through. And our vision for this piece was the day in a life of a paper forest. So it starts with sunrise and kind of the burn off of the morning dew, and then weather comes through, there's wind, and it's all in the studio kind of affecting this small little spinning diorama essentially that we get low and film and try to create this immersive experience for the viewer. And it was really lovely to see that film in this context on the big screen. And there's a little soundtrack. If you get close enough to the screen, you can hear this little Foley that we recorded in our apartment of Alka-Seltzer and water and tickling the cactus thorns to get a kind of funny thorny sound, and millet being dropped on top of things. So this hail, we're expecting hail in Brooklyn today, we don't know. So trying to think about nature and then playing with it on a smaller scale. And it was really great to see a little project like that through, and seeing it again here at the garden this past weekend really inspired us to like, maybe we should consider another video. It's been a while.
Definitely. No, it's another wonderful dimension to the whole exhibition for sure. Well, unfortunately, we've come to the end of the program. I want to thank all of you so much for being here, informing us about CHIAOZZA Sculpture Exhibition. Encourage people to not only see that, but to take advantage of all the other opportunities at the New England Botanic Garden at Tower Hill. Thanks again, and continued success with all your endeavors.
Thanks so
Thank
much, Jay.
you.
Thank you, Lea. Great to see you.
Also want to thank those of you watching for joining us, and hope you'll be able to tune in next time.